Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to our workshop today on designing interactive prototypes with XD. Appreciate having y'all here. Should be a fun workshop, I hope. In the chat, you will see links to the assets that we're going to use and our resource page for Spark. I'll be using the resource page for Spark to walk in Spark for XD to walk through a few things. But that assets folder is really what you want to live in if you want to be playing along. I did use the most current version of XD, I believe, for those assets. So we should be good to go there. But welcome to the workshop. My name is Brian Puente. I support Adobe Creative Cloud here at the University of Arizona, along with Alex Gonzalez, who's also who's going to be manning the chat for us today. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started, set some expectations, and then kind of start running through. Everybody who wanted the asset have access to it. Any trouble with that before we move forward? Awesome. So if you have questions as we go, please post them in the chat. I'm pretty good at reading it, but we have Alex's second set of eyes. He's more than happy to interrupt me should a question arise that we need to address. So do not hesitate to take advantage of that. Thank you so much for carving out the time. We are here for you, and we want to help you get the most out of this. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about designing interactive prototypes with XD. As the frog will tell you, you can find a resource, workshop resources here. And if you keep this link, you'll find the video uploaded right in this area when it is ready for viewing. So the agenda today is kind of as follows. I want to do a quick overview of XD and walk through a few basic pieces. And then we're going to talk about creating wireframes with XD. And then we're going to talk about understanding components and how they work when you're creating a full composition. And then we're going to talk about sharing and collaborating. Those are the main things. We'll probably hit a little bit of, we'll hit some kind of more general tips and tricks that will help you prototype and design as well. Does that sound okay for a game plan for today? Awesome. Please ask questions as we go, like I said, and we'll should have plenty of time for questions, both like as we get started and kind of while we're continuing to go. So just in the chat real quick, how many of us have not used XD before? Or is your first time using XD? Everybody here's used XD before? Everybody here? All right. Awesome. Well, for the sake of, there is a section on here that talks about what XD is. XD is a vector-based tool for designing prototypes and user experiences. Kind of awesome. And you can learn more about what all your menus look like. You'll notice that Windows and Mac menus look very similar, but we're going to go ahead and jump into a kind of a basics review here. This is where I'm going to switch off from this and go into our XD document. If you have your XD document loaded, we're going to go to 01 basics review. And then you will see some drawings here with fun stuff on them. So to kind of basically talk about XD, there are kind of three modes that you live in generally. You'll see my keyboard shortcuts right here as I kind of hit stuff. So Command C, Command V, you'll see all of those listed here. No idea what I just did, but that's okay. All right, so for a basics review, there are kind of three main workspaces in XD. There's the design workspace, which is where you will be at, which is where you will drag and drop and add in content and things like that. And where you will kind of design what this looks like. You'll have the prototyping workspace, and prototyping is what sets up all of your wires and things like that so that you can rig up your animations and your simulated interaction. And then the share space is where you will share your project out. We're going to be living mainly in the design and the prototype spaces, but there is but there will be kind of lots of opportunity to play and try and move through stuff, especially if you're working with us here. Since we're talking about design prototyping, I wanted to kind of show you a very, very common way to get started building an app, like designing an application. We're going to go through a few of them. First one is like drawing it. I drew this on my iPad earlier today, but like paper sketches are totally fine for kind of figuring out how you want to navigate your projects here. And you'll see they don't even fit the artboards correctly, which is okay. But let's kind of set up what design looks like here. This kind of give you a good idea of what you're looking for. So as we kind of go through here, we'll notice that we have kind of defined sections with names and things like that. I highly encourage you to look at applications that maybe inspire the app that you want to build. This will also work the same for desktops, websites, and things like that. I'll show you a few other ways to wireframe too. I mean, to kind of start working through your projects. I don't think I'm a super great artist, but like I think I built something where you can kind of see where I was going here. So I already put in a bunch of interactions here. Have all of us created an interaction with XD before in the prototyping workspace? Okay, so yes, Monster Burger chair. I really want one. We should go into production, but they are $10,000. So if you've got that money, we can work. So you'll see right here that in the prototype workspace, I did add a bunch of interactions to this, right? So we can use these kind of drawings or whatever or even like your existing website to build in these interactions here. The way that we would do that is with these little squares that I have right here. These just using the rectangle tool in the designs section, I created a square and then gave it an outline so it's easy to click. And then in the prototype section, I rigged it up. So if we go to preview our work here, let me go ahead and adjust this just a little bit. One of my favorite things to do in XD is just have this preview up kind of all the time. So that way we can kind of play with it. So you can see I can actually interact with these menus and make things work, even though I just use a drawing, which is pretty cool. So right here, I have this like heart interaction. I want that to be like, yeah, I favorited that, or no, I didn't. And then go through the different menus. So I can kind of set up an entire set of interactions here to kind of show off how my app's going to work. Now, one thing that I don't have here is the shop the collection button set up. So I'm going to go ahead and just walk you through real quick how to add and then rig that interaction. So to do that, we're going to go to design and grab the rectangle tool here. And then what we're going to do is zoom in, and I'm using the option key to kind of zoom in alt on Windows. On scrolling, you can also pinch and pull if you have a mouse that does that. I'm just going to click and drag out a box. Now you'll notice and see how this preview is changing in real time, which is super awesome. I love it. So you'll notice here though that the box is white. So we want to adjust the fill here. So in our properties panel, we're going to go to fill and then just uncheck the box here. It's going to give us no fill, but give us this kind of outline to work with. I want to keep a border. You could make this totally invisible. It's hard to select when it's invisible though. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep a size 1 pixel border here. And then I'm going to go to prototype. And then you'll see that this is already selected for us. Then we just click and drag to decide where we want to go. So when I click shop the collection, I want it to go to this first page. And then once that's done here, I can test it out. So make sure that my first artboard is selected, go to preview if you haven't already, click shop the collection. And it works. So that's really simply how to build an interaction there. So you'll see that the tap, when we drag this out, we select the interaction here. We want it to be a tap. There's also drag and keys and a gamepad stuff because you can, if you want to program what a game menu looks like, which might be cool. There's also voice interactions, which we won't get to today, but there are also different types, and we'll go through a few of these later. But the one that we wanted is transition, and then you can choose what the animation is, and how long it takes to work. And the neat thing is we can probably test this in real time here. So if we go to collection, come over here, adjust this duration to 1 second, and then we try it out. Let's come back. Yeah, so that's not too bad, but 0.3 seconds is probably better. And we'll try it out. Cool. Awesome. So This is kind of the very, very, very basics that I want to make sure everybody knows before we move on into like, what does wireframing look like and how do we kind of start to build an application that we want to use? Any questions so far? Sweet. All right. If they pop up, please put them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them. Cool. So let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. I'm just holding down the Option key or Alt on Windows, and I'm using the space bar here. When you use the space bar with any tool, it brings up what's called the pan tool. The pan tool lets you kind of click and drag to move around. It's a way that I really like to move around XD and most Adobe applications. So we're going to leave 0.1 then, and we're going to move on to 0.2, creating wireframes with XD. So whenever you're designing anything, really, wireframes can be a great way to kind of help you get started in creating content, especially if you're dealing with layouts. Wireframes are awesome for layouts. They can get a lot of the design work, a lot of the like extra design work, like what colors do I use and what images should I use here, and really will allow you to kind of focus on the function of the web page here. So I already have we already have this kind of finished piece right here. But if I was designing from scratch, I might use wireframes to help me kind of really quickly pick where things are going to go and how they're going to land. If I'm using XD, you can also do this on paper with boxes and squares and things like that. Like don't dismiss low fidelity as something that's not valuable. Low fidelity prototypes are awesome for just kind of showing people what functions you want and like giving them an idea of what form looks like. Do not discredit that when you're doing anything that's layout. That's why these boxes exist. It keeps everything super simple. You can also go in and add text like home button and things like that afterward, but the boxes are a great way to get started. So I went ahead and created a box over here. If you're using our files, what we're going to do, this box is already kind of grouped together, but basically what this box consists of is a box and then 2 lines. I highlighted all of those and then I grouped them like so. Command G will group these together, and then that will allow you to kind of let these live as a single item so that you can copy and paste them kind of at your heart's content here. So if I were trying to create what a web page looks like, what I might do here is I'm going to go ahead and delete those. I have my wireframes. I have my empty space here. You can use a new artboard to create a space like in the size that you want. If you want an iPhone 11 or X, you can do that and it'll create a blank canvas for you to work from. Labeling these is always helpful, but I'm going to go ahead and delete this one for now. I'm going to go ahead and start building this out. One cool thing that we can do with the regular selection tool, the keyboard shortcut for that is V, or click on this, is that if you go from the top to the bottom, you can bring down guides to help you, especially if you know how you want to align things. These guides are here to kind of make it easy for you to know where things live. You have horizontal and vertical guides. You'll get the horizontal guides from the top of the screen here. You will get the vertical lines by dragging from the left of any artboard. So you can kind of make sure that stuff is right where you want it, which can be really handy. So you can kind of drag those out. All right. So let's go ahead, and I think that this was set to like 60 here. So let's make sure this one's 60 as well, so they look and feel the same. Cool. All right. So really quickly, we're going to go ahead and build like a quick navigation menu like the one on the right-hand side over here. So to do that, just with the boxes, we're going to select this box. And then this is my favorite way to do stuff. Like I like holding down the Option key on Mac or Alt on Windows. Then you can click and drag to create a copy. That works inside of Illustrator and Photoshop as well, I believe. Alex, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So that allows you to click and drag a copy like an Option. Now you have a free copy here. All right. So you can also copy and paste if you prefer, but we're going to go ahead and zoom in here. I'm just holding down Alt or pinching and pulling to zoom in. I'm just going to grab like a top little icon here that's going to serve as our burger menu. If you don't hold down Shift, you'll get this kind of free transform here where you can adjust the how wide or narrow this is, which is fine, but I'm gonna go hold down shift to keep a box. And then I'm just gonna let go when it's about this size and then drop it into place. Cool. And now I have a couple of options. So I can go back to this box if I need to, if I want to make another box, which I do because I want to kind of fill out what this looks like here. Put another box over there. I'm going to hold down the Alt key again, just from this object, and move it. You'll see these little smart guides. Whoops. Hold down the Alt key. There we go. You'll see these smart guides that'll help you keep things lined up, because I just want this to be directly across on the opposite side. Like this is like the home, this is like the main menu bit. This is like the shopping cart or what have you. Cool. And then I also just created a regular box that I wanted to use for text. You can do this however you want, but I'm just gonna go ahead and Alt drag here and then size this down just to kind of describe, it's a visual describe kind of what's happening here with this prototype. Cool. So now I have my kind of top menu here. I'm going to go ahead and grab another box and then kind of want to put in like what an image might look like here. If I want to kind of like get a splash image that kind of takes up the whole entire screen, grab the top left, kind of pull down. Cool. And then I want to grab another one of these and kind of build, click and drag it to kind of put in place like what a button might look like here. And I can come into this box. I can click the text tool. If I wanted to, I could type in, and you have all of your fonts and sizes over here in the properties panel on the right under text. You go ahead and type in shop. Yeah. Or however you wanted to do it. Cool. And then you can resize this over here. Properties, you can press with inside of the text field with the font size selected. You can press up to kind of size up or down to size down. You can also type in a value that you want. You can center it, justify it left or right. These buttons are cool. So you can do kind of like all lowercase, all uppercase, or all first letter case. So if you're like me and you always type like this, but you meant to type like this, you can just click the button to adjust them. It's pretty cool. And then I can just click and drag to kind of line that up with the center. And there we go. This making sense so far? Any questions? Your wireframing can be this simple. And the idea is that all of these X's serve as placeholders that you can come in and replace later with the content that you want. So you don't necessarily need to worry too much about content in order to start building out a wireframe for your prototype. Cool. All right. One extra thing I wanted to talk to you about wireframing is how to kind of fill an area with text. So if you're working with, so if you have like a description area that you want and you don't want to type in like description and a bunch of other stuff, you don't necessarily have to. If you grab if you grab a block of text here, or I'm sorry, if you just grab like a square, we'll just start a fresh one actually. Just grabbing the square tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click and drag out a box. Cool. We're getting a little advanced a little early here, which is awesome. So I have this box, and then I want XD has tons of plugins that you can use to help you create content, which is awesome. So in your XD section up here at the top, we're going to go to plugins. Then you'll see I have this one called Lorem Ipsum, which will place placeholder text for me, which is awesome. But to get Lorem Ipsum, I went to plugins, then I went to browse plugins. Once you do, there are all sorts of plugins you can use here. We're only going to talk about Lorem Ipsum because it only fills text, but there are tons of plugins to do all manner of things. Thanks for hanging out, Zach. I hope you have a good weekend too. So if we go up to search, and Lorem Ipsum is kind of what is like default language for filler text. So if I just type in Lorem, O-L-R-E-M, then I'll see this Lorem Ipsum plugin here. Mine's already installed, but I'm going to go ahead and uninstall it just to reinstall it. This plugin is free. Some cost money, some don't. Most are free though. We're going to install this plugin here. And then we can close this out. And then the way that lorem ipsum works is that you have to have a rectangle and it has to be selected. So I created a rectangle, I selected it. Now I can go up to plugins, go to lorem ipsum, and then fill with placeholder text. So when you first launch it, it may ask you questions about like what lorem ipsum style you want. But the cool thing is here, and fill that. It's okay, what do you want? We're going to go with English here. We can include line breaks if we want to see that. Trim the text to fill the area. I'm fine with what it has. You can end with a punctuation mark if you wanted it to. Hit insert text, then it creates text field for you. So you can see kind of what your designs look like with text, which can be great, especially if you don't have copy yet. Is this making sense so far? Any questions? Okay. Last thing I want to talk about before we move on to kind of a little bit higher fidelity wireframe and what you might consider when building that is XD has some really great tools to help you not have to replicate work. We're going to go through a few of them as we go, but I'll start with the simplest one. One of I think the most powerful things about XD is that if you have two artboards, here it is. We were playing around earlier. You can copy stuff from one area from one artboard, and then if you highlight the next artboard and paste it, it pastes that all in place so that you don't have to realign everything or readjust everything. If everything's the way that you want it, you just need it on a new artboard. You can highlight the things that you want. You can click and drag like I'm doing here, or you can hold down shift click and just select the elements that you want. They'll all highlight together in this bounding box. Edit, copy, or Command C. But if then I click on Lo-Fi Wireframe 2 and then Command V, and everything will paste exactly in place. Saves a ton. I'm glad you like the plugin. There are so many. There's even ones for like filling up profile icons with fake faces. So it's kind of wild. But anywho, we can copy and paste this stuff in the same place, and that can save a ton of time. And this is something that we covered in the basics workshop, but if you ever wanted to duplicate an artboard, it's pretty easy to do. You can right click it and then you can copy and paste an artboard. You can copy and paste an artboard, or my favorite method of duplicating anything, hold down the Alt key or Option on, the Alt key on Windows, Option on Mac, then click and drag out to create a copy. And you'll notice that I have artboards in all sorts of different locations here. The locations don't really matter too much. They're simply for you to help you organize and design things. I've seen artboards that kind of cascade left to right and then kind of fan out like this. I've seen ones that cascade from top to bottom. It's whatever makes sense for you and your workflow. I'm sure that if you looked it up, there are some optimized workflows and things like that, but that's where we are. Cool. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to like a higher fidelity wireframing using kind of like a default design language here. So if you decide that you want a kind of higher fidelity wireframe, you'll see that I have all of these kind of design elements here. I did not make these, and you don't have to make yours necessarily either. All we kind of did was under the XD, under file rather, you will find get UI kits. And then if we go to wireframes, it will load up this wireframe section here that basically has tons of wireframe kits for all sorts of different applications and sizes. So like if you just wanted to say like, this is what I want my thing to do, I'm going to go ahead and download that kit to kind of show you what it looks like. Updated wireframes, pulls up my downloads folder. They have it for mobile and for web, because often those are kind of the two standard kind of spaces here. We'll go ahead and double click mobile. Once we do, you will find that there's a UI elements section. Here that kind of has all of your basic UI elements, things like icons, logos, fonts, like font sizes, basically like if you're trying to on your document put what all of your colors and logos are here, they give you a template to work from. You can kind of copy and paste these elements as you want in between different projects. You can even take entire sections, which is what I did, and move them into a separate document here. But you have all of these different UI elements. My favorite thing though, these are very, very cool, but my favorite thing is that they also have kind of ideas for layout. So like if you knew that your prototype needed a whole sign up section, they have that kind of spaced out, like what it might look like to create a login. You go and you'll customize this to make it make sense for you. But the idea is that you don't have to go through and build every single piece from scratch all the time. So you can kind of use these design kits to help you get started here. And again, kind of take the, kind of make the design work a little bit easier here. I wonder if these have, so these aren't rigged up, but if you really wanted this onboarding piece here, you could go through and rig up all these together using the steps that we showed in kind of the first section to build this out so that you can really quickly show somebody what you want your app to be and feel like without having to add a bunch of design elements to this. Things like menus, like what messaging looks like, filters and searches, all sorts of things that you can use to reconstruct a page here and kind of take the and kind of minimize the language of the design so it's really easy to kind of see, for people to see what it is you're going for here. And an awesome way to test out functionality too, because all of the design decisions are kind of already made. And it's just kind of putting it together and then getting it in front of people and adding the content that you want. So this would be a little bit of a higher fidelity prototype. And it's pretty cool. And I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of it. You may have noticed that I have multiple XD documents open. I can copy from one and paste into another pretty easily. I'm on our workflow here. I have a bunch of different sections with different documents that we're going to be using. So it's pretty easy to kind of work inside of this. So any questions so far before I move on to just making sure that we're comfortable with how repeat grids work? Because those absolutely help you move faster in this application. Cool. All right. So if I look at this wireframe 1 where it's at right now, these things are kind of where I want it, and we're kind of all just living in design mode. I don't think I guess there's a few things I've rigged up, but nothing major. So back to design mode here. I want to take this group here and duplicate it out. I can absolutely copy and paste or option click and drag. One of the deficits to doing something like this though is that I have to adjust everything manually if I want it to be uniform. If I instead create what I want to be grouped together the way that I want it one time, I can click and drag to select it. And then in my properties panel, I can go to repeat grid. My keyboard shortcut for that is Command R for repeat. So we'll go ahead and do that. Command R or Control R on Windows. And then it changes my blue guides to green guides. And then I can just click and drag out to create multiple copies. I can create them horizontally and vertically forever, which is super cool. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then we will drag this down here. Cool. So let's say that I had that many things, right? So those are set up. If I scroll down here, I can find these, and these are kind of hanging off the page, right? Maybe the design that I have, it's not the case for this one, but let's say the design that I have, I want to entice them to kind of scroll through. One cool thing that I can do is with any group that's kind of set up or anything that's extended off of the area here, if I select it, if I select the group that I have, I can come over here to this section and turn on scroll groups. So it allows parts of your artboard to scroll independently from the rest of them. So if I select the scroll group here, let's see how it works. Then once I do that, then I can click and drag horizontally and vertically. I'm using my mouse wheel to do it, but I can kind of have this scroll action here. and also have this kind of side to side interaction. I could rig all of these up with interactive buttons and things like that. But if what you're trying to show off in your wireframe is that this prototype can move left and right, and there are menus that would, like if this was a shopping catalog or what have you, that might be really nice to show that, yeah, I want it to be able to scroll left and right so people can kind of see what they want. So I just want to make sure that you were aware of those scroll groups. They're really helpful, and a relatively newer feature to XD that I have gotten a ton out of. If we didn't have this, we'd have to do a bunch of auto animating, which, while great, is not always the funnest. And it requires multiple artboards. One other thing that's cool about this section here is that we can adjust our view port as well for this. So if I click and drag this in a little bit, you see that I can hide sections here. So if I want to kind of, so let's say that I wanted this kind of like this, kind of drag that out, and I'll move this over a little bit. So it's kind of all in a container, but you only see one thing at a time. Maybe that's what you want, is you want to kind of pique people's interest to keep scrolling left or right. You can kind of adjust this framing to make it make sense. I probably wouldn't go with something that's as narrow as this because there's nothing to indicate that you would scroll, but I might kind of show maybe half of a next thing with a border around it. And then it will center based off of what the view size is. So really easy to kind of work with. Cool. Any questions on that before we continue? Hopefully this has been helpful so far. Please let us know if you have questions kind of as we go. Any questions on this kind of wireframing idea, why we do it, or why you might want to consider using elements like this, or any other questions that we can kind of speak to about wireframing before we move on? Grab a sip of water here. Cool. We might get through this real fast. All right, awesome. So the next section I want to kind of talk about is kind of how we would, now that we kind of have this wireframe done, how do we kind of get from here to here, if that's where we wanted to go. You'll want to have kind of all of your elements together and ready. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this here. So you have kind of all of your layout kind of set up how you want it. And then we would start by kind of constructing things. So if I wanted to, I guess we could do here. So if I drill in and I select this area here, I can right click and then let's see here. So I can right click and copy and paste to move from area to area. I can add different things. We're actually going to leave this alone here. Let me go ahead and show you how we might build this section here. So what we want to do for this is definitely a repeat grid. So if I get rid of these here, cool. I would build one thing the way that I wanted, then I create a repeat grid, right? And then I would drag it out to kind of make it how I want it to be. And let me know if we need to go through anything again. We could have multiple ones, either horizontally or vertically. We'll stop here. In a repeat grid, you have these gutter sections that allow you to adjust exactly how wide or narrow the gutters are. Keeping that uniform can be really helpful for your designs. I mean, this is something we talked about in the last workshop, but I think that it's worth repeating here. You can, with your repeat grid, all of these are the same image, right? But if I wanted to fill in multiple ones, all I have to do is find the 4 images that I want and then drag them in. So what we'll do here is we'll go to Finder. And under our workshop assets here, we will find a bunch of chairs. You pick any 4 that you want. I'm just going to hold down the Command key or Control on Windows just to select the 4 chairs. And then all I need to do is click and drag them. And then I want to make sure that I'm highlighting just the you'll see that when I do this, there are two boxes here. There's the background box and there's the chair box here. I want to make sure I'm just on the chair box. Once I bring those four in and let go, then it adds all four of those chairs to this design here. So I can just click and drag to bring them in, which is super awesome. The other thing that we can do here is with text, and this requires a little bit of setup, but if you just create a .txt document and put in the values that you want here. So here I have prices and here I have titles. All I need to do is click and drag this over one of the titles in the repeat grid that I want to repeat, then drop it. This is awesome because if you're working on a prototype and let's say that halfway through this higher fidelity prototype, they decide that they want name changes and things like that. All you have to do is go back to this chair document and edit the name, or maybe we're not carrying that line anymore. Or if it's like a personnel thing, like this person's not here anymore, or whatever it is, or whatever the situation might be, you can just go through and edit the text file, then just re-drop it. And it makes it super easy. Prices go the same way. Click and drag it. It'll highlight what you want to drop, let go, and then it fills it out. Cool. Making sense so far? Awesome. Cool. So we talked a bit about prototyping at the beginning, but I just kind of want to get a bead. How many of us are familiar with how to create overlay menus and things like that inside of XD? Do we need to go through that? Feel free to let me know. Give that a second. All right. So if that's not 100% needed, we'll probably move on from this section for the sake of time and move on to talking about components, kind of how they work and why we might use them. So components allow us to kind of group objects together and then reuse them in multiple spaces, which is awesome. So what we'll do here is we're going to go ahead and a component's already been created on the 4 understanding components here. This component was created by building out the objects. You'll see this is a bunch of different pieces here. You can select them all, and then you'll group them as components. And I'll show you how to do that separately here in just a second, but I want to show you how components work. So with components, when a component is made in the way that you would create one, actually, we can do that real quick. If we wanted to create a component, we can select the 2 objects or multiple objects that we want to be component. It can be a ton of objects, or right click it, and then we will make component. When we make a component, now this is, I accidentally did the whole entire thing, but let me go ahead and just pick these 3 elements here real quick. Right click, make component. You'll see that now they're all highlighted with this green box here, and the top left box has a diamond on it that's filled in. That means that this is a master component. It also adds it to our assets panel as a component at the top here, and they just name it component arbitrary number. So we'll change that to Altura. I just double clicked to do that. And then what this allows us to do is whenever we want to reuse this asset, as opposed to coming back to this panel here, we can just click and drag it out to the artboard, which is awesome. I accidentally missed a piece of that component. But that's kind of generally the idea, is that we can kind of repurpose things. We can repurpose entire sets of things very, very easily. So let's go ahead and we'll use components here to kind of fill out the top areas of this design here. So I'm going to select my component. I believe it's this one. Cool. And then we can go through the same thing we did before. We can copy it and select this guy, then paste, and then paste, which is awesome. So now all of these are pasted in place, right? And they kind of all do the same thing. But one of the beautiful things about components is that I can make changes to different components as I need to for different things. So for example here, if I wanted to change this background here. Let's say that when we have dark images, this is, or when we have light images, this is black on white for contrast. So what we can do here is I can select the objects that I want. And then I can go to fill and choose a different color. Let's go with just kind of like lighter color, I guess. Well, that way we can still kind of see it. We can adjust these. Change the fill to, then we can use the eyedropper tool here to kind of select the same color. Just click on the little eyedropper and select it like that. Cool. And then we'll choose this background color and we'll fill it with kind of this. Actually, I'll color pick this chair. Say we wanted to match the chair here. And we'll adjust it so it's not as a little bit lighter, a little darker actually. Cool. So let's say that's what we wanted for this one. Awesome. So that made a change here. But the neat thing is, let's see if this works. We can come through and now you'll see that this has a little diamond on it, right? That means that this is a component, but we've adjusted that component. If I come over here to this main component, though, and I wanted to change all the other ones that weren't adjusted, I can just double click to kind of drill down to the area I want to work in. I'm on the square right now. And I can adjust the fill and adjust that fill everywhere else, which is cool. So let's say that we were kind of moving towards this more red. Actually, we'll pick this orange down here to do it. So like that's our thing. We changed our logo to white. So I can select this guy right here, adjust the fill for the white text here, and you'll see it adjusts everywhere else where it exists here. So you can kind of pick and choose what areas you keep, what areas you adjust, and kind of how they all interact together, especially across multiple artboards. I only have 3 here, but if you were doing a really high fidelity prototype where this was everywhere, using these as components can be super helpful. I mean, creating your content here. And like I said, it allows you to kind of make those kind of more global adjustments kind of across all of your different spaces. Cool. Making sense so far? Master component allows you to create and adjust content that's usable across multiple artboards, and then you can adjust individual components here. A little dot on the top left, zooming in doesn't help that too much, but the little dot on the top left means that it is a component that's been modified individually. And then one that doesn't means that it's the same as the master component. And these can kind of be adjusted all the time. All of the headers that I used here are also components that that I use. So if you wanted to go through and play with those and see how it might be to adjust a background color or text, you can do that here. I mean, it won't affect the rest of the components, which is pretty cool. And like I said, saves a ton of time. All right. Sweet. So far, so good? Okie doke. So now we're going to talk about how you can use components to create interactions. So I have this little heart here. I'm just going to drill down to it. And then I want to set up a micro interaction with this heart here, so that users can kind of click to like something to kind of see what that looks and feels like in our prototype. So what we'll do here is we'll highlight this, and then we're going to go under component and then hit plus to make this whole entire thing a component. We want to make sure that both things are selected. I think that they're both selected in this group. We'll just drill down for fun. Select both of them. We're going to hit make component. Cool. So this is the component's default state. So nothing will happen here. We've simply created a component that we can duplicate and move around. You'll see that it creates the component in the assets folder. We'll just call this heart or like button. That's probably better. Cool. So like button. And then what we'll do is we'll hit the plus button to create a new component state. And then we have a bunch of different options here. We have new state, which is just going to be, you will decide what the interaction is yourself in the prototype menu. but toggle state will make it so that it automatically will switch inside of our prototype menu whenever we click on it, which is awesome. So I'm going to use toggle state because that's what I want. It's great for switches and things like that. We're going to go ahead and use it for this heart here. We're going to click on toggle state. And we'll just call it toggle state. You can come in and kind of define these the names of everything but the default state. So we'll just liked. Cool. Now that that's selected, we're going to go ahead and make some adjustments here. So I'm going to zoom in. And what I want to do is, what would a liked state look like? I would, for me in this particular situation, I think the heart will be bigger. So I'll double click on the heart, make it a little bit bigger. I'm holding on the shift. Hold up, back it up here. Okay, toggle state. I'm going to go ahead and grab a corner here. I'm going to go ahead and hold on Alt and Shift, or Option and Shift, to kind of maintain height and width here. Make that bigger. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the fill color to red. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this border and maybe I will make it a little bit broader. So like 3 pixels. I haven't done this that way before, but just something that visually indicates that, yes, this is a button that we clicked here. So then we'll come back here, and you'll need to keep in mind that get to the component here. When you drill down to the component, that we set it to the toggle state. We want to make sure that we're on the default state by default. Now, if we come over here to our prototype, I should be able to click, and then you'll see that heart kind of grows, comes back. So we have the kind of little just focused component state here. And component states can do all sorts of crazy things. This is just a very simple one. But this will kind of really quickly allow you to create an interaction like this. It's a micro interaction. There are component states that can bring up entire menus and things like that. And Adobe's XD website, which is linked in our resources, has tons of that stuff. But does this make sense? Anybody get a chance to try it? Have any questions about it? Cool. So we'll kind of leave it in that default state there. Then we can kind of click and unclick to kind of size to kind of see what it looks like. And I think it's really fun to do. There are all sorts of things you can do here, but this is a really simple kind of interaction that we can do for this thing. And if and we can go through and kind of make changes to it if we wanted to. If we wanted to come in here, then maybe we'll change the border here on this to kind of like a lighter gray. We'll change this to the same light gray because we kind of want them to feel like, yeah, you haven't hit that like button yet. And then we can come through and test it out. So the idea is that you can kind of play with these kind of in real time, which is pretty cool. Awesome. Any questions on that? And that's kind of how we build a component, and how we kind of work with component states. Once the component's made, in the component menu, hit that plus button to change and adjust it. Cool. Let's see here. All righty. Don't see anything in the chat. Looking okay. Awesome. So that's how we'll kind of start. That's kind of a super high level view into component states. Adobe has made some awesome animated states that you can use in your own designs and that we can kind of deconstruct and reconstruct here that I kind of want to go through. So we have a few of them. Let me go ahead and change this to viewport here. Some of them are really cool. So under this animated states here, go ahead and adjust this actually real quick, because I think that I left one in a different state it's supposed to be in. Sorry about that. One moment. No, that's fine. Okay, cool. So so in your preview window, if you click on any of these, you can see all these super interesting states that they built. So like progress bars and things like that. That that are pretty incredible to look at. And you can kind of see all of them from here. I think one of my favorites is probably this little heart that fills in right here. That would be super cool to add to something. And then this little ticker right here. We can kind of simulate like what adding more to the cart looks like. It's also these lock and unlock things. So let's go ahead and break down real quick this heart right here. So if we click on it in the design section here, we'll kind of see that. We'll zoom in a little bit more. We'll kind of see that what happens here when we go to the filled state is that it kind of fills in with this heart here. So let me see. We can get to what's going on beforehand. So if I click on default state and then double click on this twice, we'll see that there's a mask inside of here with two shapes. So there's the heart that's kind of filled in gray, and then this red blob that we use for the mask here. So these two were kind of put together, and then a mask was created that allows us to hide this kind of heart area, and masks are kind of a key to this. And then you can find under the menu here the mask with shape, or and you'll use that masking tool to kind of hide everything else underneath it. So you'll put everything kind of together and then use a mask to create this here. And then for the first state, we show it with it there. And then for the second state, if we drill in a little bit, we'll see that all they did was just kind of move the shape up, and that creates this mask and this effect that we're looking for. So pretty awesome. And again, just kind of, it's neat to kind of go through and kind of reconstruct what they did to create these shapes and things like that. You can go through and you can look at the properties here and kind of piece together how they put these designs together, which is pretty fun. You see that they kind of have these little guys over here, and they move them and scaled them up and out, and then lowered the opacity to kind of move through. Cool. So I highly recommend you take a look at these guys here. Again, like this file is a part of that, is a part of the UI kit section here. There's a whole entire thing on animations, and there's tons of them. And again, the idea is you can not only learn how to make your own by kind of deconstructing them, and they have videos that help support it, but you can also borrow and use these. You'll want to kind of adjust them to make them make sense for you. But if it's something that you need to accomplish, it's a great way to do it. And these animated component states, it used to be that you had to have multiple artboards to kind of pull off all the effects that these do. The fact that they all live in one makes it really, really easy for you to be able to get in and kind of adjust the things that you need to adjust, and add these interactions that really kind of breathe life into some of the your prototype, and also give your whoever's working with you a good idea of what it is you want to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it. Awesome. Any questions on that? Okie doke. All right, if they pop up, bring them up. So the last thing I really want to talk about here today, before we kind of open it up for questions and then wrap up the workshop, is how we can collaborate and then share our projects here. So if any of you would like to, right now you'll see that I have Alejandro or Alex on our workspace right here. So I've collaborated this project with him so he can come in and make changes to it in real time. So hopefully he'll be able to kind of show up and join us here. Would any of you like to join the session with us as well? If you throw your email in the chat that's associated with your Adobe ID, we can send you an invite real quick and you can see what this looks and feels like for yourself. If not, that's okay. But if you have it, throw it in the chat. We'll send you a link to the email that you provide. Then you can kind of jump in and hang out with us. So Alejandro was here. So The way that this works, when you want to collaborate with others, and you'll see that it's kind of real time, kind of Google Docs style, um, as you're kind of working. And this is great, but it can also be kind of dangerous. So I'll show you, I'll show you how you can kind of adjust and make changes to things as we go. Feel free to keep messing around, Alex, if you wish. And again, if you want to join us, throw in the email and we'll jump in on here. So you click on this little profile button right here. And then if you haven't enabled it yet, you'll see a button that says you need to enable, and actually we'll do it over here. So we need to save this as a cloud document so that's available on a server that everybody can access. And then it will say you need to enable this for sharing. So once you do and co-editing is enabled, then you can invite multiple people to the project. And we've had as many as like a dozen people actively working on a project in previous workshops and other courses and things like that. So because it's on the cloud, it's going to save kind of as we go. One of the cool things about this is that we have a document history here that we can adjust. So if we were working on this and something changed that we really didn't want to change here, we can go and jump back a couple of versions. We can also create marked versions so that you can come back to specific states here. So if I decided to, we made this little guy earlier today. So if I decided to move him here, and then I accidentally deleted him, I can come back to our versions here and select 11/29 today, and check it. And then we can open this version in a new window. So that way we can kind of come back to wherever we left off. We'll kind of reload this in a separate space with that where we left it initially. And we can also bookmark versions. So if we were like, we're happy with this spot, but we want to move on to something, but we want to try a different thing, we can bookmark a version and then basically we can add notes to it. Let's call this version 1. Cool. So now it's labeled version 1. All of you can kind of keep your progress for the last 60 days here. Again, if you're working in a group setting, kind of like Google Docs, it's great to kind of be able to jump back and see all the different versions that you have. But all of your versions will be saved for 60 days and they'll save as you go, which is awesome. It makes it really, really easy to see and work with multiple people on a project. Awesome. Any questions on that? Probably one of my favorite things about newer versions. Okay. Well, last but not least, we're going to talk about sharing your project out. So to share your project out, you'll select the workflow that you want to share out. I'm going to go ahead and do this first one. When you click on an artboard, a little share icon will show up at the top here. It's a really easy way to do it. So if I hit share here, let's see, to share your selection, we need to add new interactions, remove existing ones. Probably not what I want to do. So I will go ahead and select all of these and share them together here. In this design section, you can select individual artboards and share them out, or you can select an entire flow, share it out. It labels it as flow 1. You can change the name to whatever you want. We'll hit share. It takes us to the share menu. Then we can choose the type of sharing that we want to do. There is design review, which is awesome for just getting general feedback on your designs. Development will show them interactions and transitions and things like that for your developers. You can also choose to allow them to download the assets you use, so they have the exact assets you created in your prototype when you hand this prototype off to somebody to develop and implement your website or application or whatever you want. Presentations are something that people do a lot in XD, so they made those really easy. There's also user testing if you want to do any UX. If you want to do any user testing for any of your UX and UI elements, you can set it up for that. We're going to go ahead and go with design review for now. Then we can choose who has access to our link here. We're going to do anyone with a link, so I can share it with y'all if you want. You can also add specific people if you just want to be direct. So I'm going to go ahead and update my link here with those changes that I have. And then I will copy this. It's just a URL. I'll paste it in the chat if you all want to check out the work. Clear that. And then once it loads, hopefully it's working for everybody there. Thinking maybe it doesn't like Safari or my version of Safari. So let's try Chrome. Let me know if it's working for you. Cool. And there it is. The cool thing from here for your user is that they can click on this little button to see all of our interactions here. If for whatever reason they didn't know where to click, you can have this thing enabled and disabled by default that will show them where the clickables are, which is great. I think I made the whole entire thing a link, but you can see all of my interactions here, play with them, try out our different values, kind of move through and see what they look and feel like. You can add comments here. So if I wanted to make a comment on this guy here, or you wanted to, you can click and drag to place a pin. Like cancel there. There you go. Okay. And we'll place the pin. We'll type in the heart button. It's too big. Cool. Or whatever it is, you can sign in, then like you'll have that available as feedback for the person that you're working with, and they can see that and make adjustments and changes. Like I said, this is the design review here. If you went to development, it would share where everything is placed, what the heights and widths are, and potentially give you access to adjust all of the values that you wanted to for your developers. They can see exactly where things are in pixel height and width. Makes it really easy for them to kind of get a jump start on creating the content that you built. And if you want to do a custom experience, bring up a menu where basically you can enable or disable any of the options that you want. Cool. How can I save it and share for Behance? Great question. If you were looking to save it to share for Behance or any website, really, you can, once you create the link, you'll choose kind of what it is. If you're just trying to let people view it, maybe just presentation is what I would do. And anyone with a link, and then you have this link, you can copy the link and paste it on your Behance page, but you can also on Behance or any other website, you can get the embed code here, and then you can copy that embed code, and then it will place it inside of a frame that's designed to be the size of your the size of your web page. So both of those work. But you copy and paste it, and then kind of like depending on how your page is set up on Behance, if you have the option to, and I'm not sure because I haven't been there in a little bit, but if you can embed stuff, I would just take that embed code and copy and paste it into the HTML editor there, and it will let you do that. Or just copy the link and paste it. I would probably think it's the embed, that it's the embed thing right there. Does that make sense? Perfect. Awesome. Well, that's about the size of the workshop. We have all of these different but I was wondering what questions that we had before we wrap up here. I know we're wrapping a little early, and that's okay, but I'm here if you have questions, and I'm happy to help out in any way I can. So feel free to let me know. Awesome.